Hey baby, welcome to episode 1 of the Hilt podcast. Hilt is a space created by and for Black women to celebrate our whole selves. Welcome baby. Today we are talking about codependency. Baby, am I codependent? Are you codependent? I don't know. Let's find out, honey. So today we're going to be discussing codependency, of course, what it is, how it shows up in relationships, where does it stem from, and how to become more interdependent. By the end of the episode, we're going to talk about that. What is codependency? Codependency is one of those things that can have many definitions and truly depends on the individual's experiences. It's something that is difficult to define, but really easy to fall into if you're not aware of what it looks like. However, it can show up in various areas of our relationships with our lovers, family members, and friends. It also shows up heavily within ourselves in terms of things like self-esteem, self-worth, and overall outlook of ourselves. So, baby, let me tell you a story. I know in relationships, I had a tendency to show up more for my partner emotionally than they wanted or needed, and it really drained the hell out of me. After a while, I would become extremely resentful because I felt like I was pouring more into the relationship than I was getting out of it. I would overextend myself, and when they would do something that felt inconsiderate, I would ask that $1,000,000 question. How could they treat me like that after everything I've been through with them? Child, as I grew older though, I started to realize that in overextending myself, I was also engaging in things that I didn't even really want to do. But I thought they would love me more if I did them. I was completely wrong, honey, because I was searching for love in them that I hadn't found in myself yet. Does any of this sound familiar to you? If so, please understand that you are not alone. In under any circumstance, you are not alone. We did a poll on Instagram about this topic. And the question was yes or no. Do you know what codependency is? And then we followed it up by asking, what are some codependent behaviors? Here are some of the answers that we received. So under our poll results, 78% of y'all knew what codependency was, and 22% of you don't really know what it is quite yet. But the T is the responses to the characteristics. Buckle your seat. Clingy as fuck. No independence, always insecure. Being manipulated and manipulative. That's really the T, because indeed, yes. Being weak and clingy. So we think like codependency equals weakness. That's an interesting correlation. Not knowing how to be alone, needing others' input before making decisions. Someone who can't go a day without a call or attention. Now, what y'all got against calling y'all people? Like, you're supposed to talk to your person every day. Anyway, people pleasing in fear of rejection. So that's just some of the responses that we got on Instagram. Honey, baby, y'all know a lot about codependency already. I'm going to list a few ways that codependency can manifest in your relationships, and then later we'll talk about some ways that you can start to overcome them. Here are 10 signs of codependency. Feeling responsible for solving others' problems. Offering advice to others, whether it is asked for or not. Expecting others to do what the codependent says. The codependent feels used and unappreciated. Trying to please people so others will like or love the codependent person. Taking everything personally. That's me. Like that's one thing that I have been told in each of my relationships. Like, I take things really personally. Some of them like will phrase it as, you real sensitive, but like, more often than not, you take everything personally. Feeling like a victim, using manipulation, shame, or guilt to control others' behaviors. Lying to themselves and making excuses for others' bad behavior. Fearing rejection and being unlovable. So, honey, y'all really like hit the nail on the head. Like, Y'all really nailed it with the characteristics that you named, because I am looking through this list and literally each one of the ones that y'all named are on this list of 10 signs of codependency. So, according to author Melody Beattie, who wrote the book entitled Codependent No More, which actually has sold more than 5 million copies and is one of my personal favorites in terms of self-help books. So, codependency has 17 main characteristics, 17, and several manifestations under each characteristic. So, the 17 characteristics are caretaking, low self-worth, repression, obsession, controlling, denial, dependency, of course, poor communication, weak boundaries, lack of trust, anger, sex problems, miscellaneous, and then progressive. I'm going to briefly list some of the manifestations under a few of them, and if you'd like to read more, I recommend grabbing that book to read at your leisure. Now, how do we combat this codependency, honey? Like, that's the real tea. Like, how do we get back at her? I'm not a therapist by any means, but I am someone who has struggled with codependency for quite some time. And the first thing that I had to do was get honest about myself and how I do show up in relationships. This was the hardest part for me overall, because I didn't even want to believe that I had any of these traits. Therapy, honey, like, therapy is a wonderful thing. But therapy has also helped me through a lot of the understanding of codependency, as well as my overall self-worth. I've learned that codependency is a symptom of having unclear self-worth, self-esteem, among other things. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. Like, how do we become more interdependent? Because the codependent relationship obviously is not something that we want at all, period. We want an interdependent relationship. And interdependent relationships have several features, some of which include having healthy boundaries. So we got to figure out what our boundaries are. We have to learn how to reinforce those boundaries. We have to learn how to talk about those boundaries. And most importantly, we got to figure out how to stick by those boundaries. Like, another trait of codependency is creating a boundary and like doing things or accepting behaviors that push that boundary over time. And then you end up not having the boundary at all. So we got to have those healthy boundaries. Also, practicing active listening. When you are in a disagreement with somebody, are you listening to respond or are you listening to understand, baby? Because if you listening to respond, you are not forming an interdependent relationship. What you are doing is defensive listening. So we need to figure out how to listen more actively to hear what that person is actually saying, because they could be telling you their wants and needs as well. They could be establishing their boundaries as well. That could lead to a more interdependent relationship when you actually know what it is that your partner needs and what they actually want. Take some time for your personal interests too, honey. Like, stop doing everything together. Like, we see it and, people think it's cute all the time being up under each other. And, if that's your thing, do your thing, boo-boo. But we talking about interdependent relationships here. So you got to take time for your personal interests. Never forget what your personal interests are, or never get away from your personal interests, because that's part of what makes you who you are, baby. So like, let's do that. Let's make sure that we are taking time for that. Clear communication, that goes right back to active listening and having healthy boundaries. I think that one is pretty self-explanatory. Creating safety for each of you to be vulnerable. Baby, if you are not comfortable with vulnerability, if your partner is not comfortable with vulnerability, that is something that y'all gonna have to get comfortable with in order to create that safety for you both to be able to talk and actively listen. You also want to engage and respond to each other. So it can't just be you engaging and responding, baby. You got to be with somebody who is also trying to engage and respond with you. You know what I'm saying? Like, it can't be a one-way street. Communication is a two-way street. Relationships are a two-way street, regardless of the type of relationship that it is. It's a two-way street. Develop some healthy self-esteem. Now, this is something that I have battled with throughout my life, I think. what does it even mean? Like, how do you even create healthy self-esteem? Like, how does that even work? And I've learned that it's to create healthy self-esteem, you got to do the other stuff. Create the boundaries and stick to them. Make sure that you are like exploring yourself and your interests every day. Like, do something today that your future self would thank you for. That is how you build that healthy self-esteem. You create challenges for yourself, and then you overcome those challenges. And when I say challenges, I mean in a healthy way. I don't mean like you making your life more difficult intentionally. Like, nah, baby. I mean I mean that you are challenging yourself, pushing yourself to the next level. And then you are conquering those challenges, and you're doing something every day that you didn't do yesterday, something that's going to benefit you. And then last but not least, the last thing that we're going to talk about is being open and approachable with each other. So, baby, listen, if you're going to be closed off, you can't ask your partner to be not closed off. So, it's identifying what both of you need, how to move forward in your relationship. But even by yourself, baby, you can be codependent by yourself. So it's really in knowing what you need. It's knowing what works best for you, and then showing up as your best self in your relationship. Because, baby, if you are not at your best self, there's no way for you to show up as your best self, especially in a relationship. And that is the key to a healthy relationship. When you go do that self-work, when you go do the work on yourself, then you can bring your healed self to the relationship. Then you can do what you got to do. You can have your boo and y'all can be Beyonce and Jay-Z, or better yet, you can be Sierra and Russell. Okay, understand that. All right, baby. So that's our episode for today. I hope you take something from this episode and apply it to your life. And if you do, shout us out on your Instagram account. We are The Healed Podcast on Instagram. If you're not already following us, go ahead and follow us, honey. Join our community, sign up for our email list, and stay updated with us on Instagram, baby. But in the meantime, my love, I'm your host, Miss Amber Kenni, and I want you to stay awesome and stay healing. See you next time.
It was basically me trying to fit myself into a societally, what I deemed at the time, because this was my paradigm at the time. Like, I believed this. Like, it wasn't until I made the decision that, like, you know what? Everyone kind of has this mindset of like starving artists. I don't claim that energy.